Why is it a bad decision to make a movie with one actor and one location?
Why is it a bad decision? Why is it a bad decision? You know, having one actor in a movie with one location, it's just such a great idea on paper. Because you read that and you're like, wow, this could be so cheap to shoot. Which is true. It's true. Now, I will say in the case of our film, you know, that is what it is. It's one actor in one location. And for the first several, whatever, weeks, when you're thinking about how cool it would be to do that, it's great. But then the realization starts to sink in that, I have nothing to cut to. What are you going to cut to when it's one actor? In our case, you don't ever get to see outside of the mystery room to see where he is. That's the whole mystery of the movie, is where is he? So it becomes incredibly complex to figure out, how am I going to block this scene when it's one guy on the phone the whole time? It becomes far more complicated than you ever thought possible, because you have to figure out how to capture scenes in a way that continues to be interesting, changing up the camera angle, keeping the camera moving, figuring out what the moments are. That's really difficult to do, and we really struggle with that. And it also becomes a real problem, because in the editing room, if there's a scene that's dragging, how are you going to cut around that? Because if your actor is walking around the room, you can't exactly cut for time. Like if the scene is 5 minutes too long and he's doing a circle around the room, which we did a couple times. Well, if I cut 5 minutes out of the scene, suddenly he's on the other side of the room. He's on the wrong side of the room. So you're really stuck with that. So that was a big issue that I did not anticipate going in, and how difficult that was going to be. What saved us on that front, and if you are shooting a project that you have one subject in one very small location, insert shots is what's going to save your life. Now for us, if you can do this, it's great, but for us, we couldn't do it. You know, cut to the exterior of the house, or it's nightfall, or passage of time, or something. We didn't have that option. We were in the box, so we were stuck. And I found, like, he's on the phone, so like we had to come up with different ways of him. Like sometimes he's got the phone like this, but then to take the phone and have him put it on speakerphone and put it on his chest helped. Sometimes he sets it on the ground. So we had to be really creative about how to do it so that so then if the phone's on the ground and it's speakerphone, well, now you can just get a bunch of inserts of the phone here, and now we can upcut to time and cut things out if we have to do it. That saved our butts. The other real challenge when you have one actor like that in one location is that it can start to look visually very boring. Because one thing that we love about the movies is visual spectacle. And if it's one schlep on the screen talking the whole time, it's like, wow, how am I going to make that interesting? So that also was a real challenge for us, is how to keep this visually interesting. And one of the ways that we did that was we continually messed with the light. We tried to make the room like another character. So we would actually show shots of the room, and then the room would shift in the way that the lighting was. So it actually starts from bright, where we had a very soft overhead kind of light. It goes to the side. It has more of a nightmarish contrasty look. And the light it moved from overhead, it started moving to the side. It kept getting lower and lower and lower throughout the film until he was with a flashlight. And actually the stuff where he's with the flashlight is what looks the best. But it continues to morph and change the look of your room so that it doesn't look same the whole time. That was something that I never considered moving in. The other real challenge is you really better have a good set. Ours was a gray box. And it looked good. Like I thought that the production designer did a really good job, but Man, when you don't have any furniture, like keeping something in the background that looks good, ooh, that's tough. That was another significant challenge, which is why we decided to change up the lights and keep it looking different. We also changed the lensing a lot too. Like we mapped out different beats of the story, and each chunk had a different name and look. So we would call it, like, this is the nightmare beat. So in the nightmare beat, we shot with these kinds of lenses with the light looking this way and the framing looked like this, so that it constantly morphed and changed. Because boy, you'll water torture your audience to death if you're not careful. So if you're doing a movie like that where it's one character, one room, I would really spend some time thinking about how to continue to change the look. There's a movie called Buried, which is an excellent film with Ryan Gosling where he's in a coffin, the whole movie. And they did something really fascinating with that movie where they used a cell phone for light. They used a cell phone, a flashlight, a lighter, and green glow sticks. So each of those have a different color temperature. So it changes the feel of the room as the movie goes. That was very clever, very interesting way to keep it looking different. They also had a bunch of very creative ways of filming in a space like that. It's a coffin, that's tough. But they would build long coffins, they would build deep coffins, some were bigger. They would also do really complex camera moves, and that's something we did as well. We would map out very complex moves where the camera's going up and down and left and right, and the camera's kind of dancing, as opposed to just sitting in one location and the camera just boringly pointing at them. That'll kill you if you don't. You got to be very careful if you're faced with that. So we also, I think the other thing that really helped us was sound. And this is the constant thing I find is overlooked in indie film, is the importance of sound. And I'm not talking about mic sound, I'm talking about sound design. It helped the world feel bigger by the way it sounded, and adding weight to this one room and make it like, how does a threatening room sound? Now that will really, it can increase your production value, especially if we made it sound like there was other machinery outside of the room. That took a lot of work to do, but without that, I didn't anticipate going in how much work that was actually going to be. That took months and months and months I did a lot of the sound design on it. So months of figuring out how to create a room that feels like it's a threat just auditorily, Yeah. A lot of lessons learned on that. A lot of lessons learned. And I think finally the last thing for us, we had another character on the phone. Phone conversations are really interesting to shoot because it's one actor, blah, 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 blah. And you can't see that. If you're not shooting the other end of the conversation, it's just what's on their face. Well, there's a number of ways to do that. I think a lot of times they'll have someone off camera reading the lines to them who's not an actor. Now that is I get for convenience, that's oftentimes what happens, but it really doesn't do the actor any favors. I was really worried about that with our film, because our actor really needed to be vulnerable and terrified. And if we had some scripty, are you scared in the room? I'm scared. It's just not going to work. How's an actor supposed to get into character when the person reading the script is just some person who's just there drinking their coffee and in their Ugg boots? That's just not going to work. So I had the other actor on set. We actually built her own little offstage box of her own, because she's in our story, she's claiming to be in a similar space. So we tried to make her feel just like that. What that did was it put them both in a vulnerable position, and now they can hear each other actually on set as opposed to just over the phone. And they were able to actually physically connect and talk and work the scenes out together. That was a huge help to us. It also allowed for improvisation. Each of them had their own mics, and so now they were able to explore the scene together, and that helped us a ton. So if you're doing a project like that, I would highly recommend exploring some of those options. And if it's one character on screen, really paying attention to how difficult it's going to be for them to do it, the kind of accommodations you're going to have to do to make them comfortable, because that's becomes what it's all about, because they're the only one you're going to see.
And so then are you dealing with almost two arcs, because you have the arc of the main character, but then you have the arc of the relationship?
Yeah.
So now you're working with kind of two. You have the beginning. I mean, I don't want to give away too much, but I really felt that they were connected and that they had a bond.
Yeah.
Without again giving, but I was impressed at their conversations with each other.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That there is an arc in the course of our story. There is, I mean, as all stories should have an arc with the characters. Now, what's interesting about the behind the scenes of that, so the two actors didn't really know each other before this whole thing began. They kind of met each other very quickly before the start of filming. So there really was no relationship. In the course of filming, my relationship with both of them was really key. So oftentimes, this is going to sound really dorky, but oftentimes, at the beginning of a shot and it's him alone in this big room, especially when we're doing the early reveals and the terrified look, I'd hold his hand, before as the camera's getting, all right, everybody roll camera, roll sound, quiet on set, take one, and I just stay there with him, like, let him know you're not alone. I'm right here. Got you. All right, you ready? Ready to do this? Yeah, ready. And then I'll back off and then let him do the scene. That eased off as we went, and as she slowly became part of his world, because the two characters meet essentially on the phone and they get to know each other as the story grows. She essentially came in and replaced me. So I was able to back away slightly as the director, and then she was able to come in and oftentimes would hold his hand during scenes, especially when there was emotional scenes, and I would try things with them, because it was all about the connection, even though it's only on the phone. But I would say things like, tell each other a secret that none of us can hear. Like, we'll all turn the mics off and just tell each other something that no one else knows. And it's such an interesting place to be, especially as a director, because you see them say something and then they start laughing or something like that. And it's like, oh, what did you say? It's not for me to know. Like, that's only between them. That's something that the two of them can share. But that really went whoop and pulled them together. And then as the scenes went, oftentimes I would let them just improv, and I would tell her, what do you really want to ask him? What do you really want to know? And she'd go, yeah, boom. And we'd be recording, and just boom, she'd just go right into something and try stuff. That was such an interesting, we were all kind of crossing paths, and I'm pulling away while she's coming in. It was a very, very cool spot to be.